So today we're going to talk about how to design and develop a low-cost, amazing plaza. And by the way, the picture that you're looking at was not a low-cost one. As a matter of fact, that picture you're looking at didn't actually get developed like that, and I'm going to tell you more about that coming right up. But I want to start with the fact that communities spend a fortune on streetscapes, facade improvements, on downtown events, on marketing, on beautification, on parking issues. As a matter of fact, 80% of a downtown association director's time is spent with the first 5 things on this list. We spend millions and millions of dollars on these things. But at the end of the day, you're still missing the primary ingredient. And for some reason, this is not in most people's lexicon, and that is the word programming. And I'm not going to spend today talking about why plazas are really important, because we've got lots of videos in the Resource Center, the Power of Public Plazas, getting people downtown 250 days a year, fixing downtown, where do we start, how to bring downtown to life. And if you need to convince local residents, your elected officials, then have them watch these, particularly the Power of Public Plazas and then the resurgence of downtowns. And that will help them understand why plazas are important. But I wanted to let you know that the average plaza in the US and Canada costs between $5 and $8 million to build and develop. There are many that we've researched and even been a part of that are between 20 and 30 million, and a couple even more than that. You can build one. I'm going to show you how to build one today for less than $200,000. That's less than 3% of a $5 million plaza, including the programming. Now, and you may say, well, we can't even afford $200,000. Well, I'm going to show you how you could get most of that donated. And so the bottom line with this is you don't have to spend a fortune, but your goal would be to have one of those $5 million plazas over time. But once you build one and it becomes so vital to the community, then people and local leaders will invest into it and you can grow it over time. But the big deal is to get it started on the cheap. And of course, when it comes to downtown, if you have any vacancies at all, the way to get rid of those is to have people consistently downtown 250 days a year. I've harped on that till I'm blue in the face, and you've heard me say it over and over and over. When we talk about getting people downtown on a consistent basis, we're talking about, could you get 1% of your population downtown on any given night? Just 1%. Concentrate on Fridays and Saturday nights for the first year, then add Thursday, then add Sunday afternoon till about 6. Sunday, you know, we're not out late on Sundays typically. Then add Wednesday, then add Tuesday. This is what you do, 1%. So let me give you a good idea. Population, how do you get people downtown between 4 and 9 p.m.? If you're a population of 1,000 people, you know what? Can we get 10 people downtown on any given night, 250 days a year? Our goal would be to get 50 people downtown. Here it is, 2,000 people, can you get 20 people? 5,000, can you get 50? And on and on and on, and we can go through all of this. And so, you know, districts in the residents in a district, if you're a bigger urban area. But if we can get people hanging downtown, a small population, you know, and this means people, if you wanted 100% of your population to go downtown a couple of times a night, it would be fantastic. And if they will do that a few times a year, it will be fantastic. That means only, you know, 10% of your people would even go downtown in a month. And so it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but it needs to be a place where people say, hey, let's wonder what's going on downtown tonight, or let's go hang out there. Here's the bottom line. I want you to all think of your downtown as your community living room. Think about the activities you have at home when company comes over. You might sit there and say, hey, let's watch a movie and have popcorn. Or you might be watching sports. Or you might pull out some table games or some board games. You may say, well, hey, you know what? Let's have a birthday party. Wouldn't it be great if birthday parties went downtown? You know, big graduations, other celebrations. It might be, you might host backyard barbecues. You might host tailgate parties for football games or basketball games or hockey games. It doesn't matter. Or you might even rent one of these bouncy houses to celebrate a birthday. You know, you can rent these things. Or you might even fire up a barbecue, or I should say a fire pit in your backyard when it's a little bit cooler and invite friends over. And you might even put front porch swings or chairs like these on your front porch. It makes your home feel welcoming, and every shop should be welcoming. And every single one of these should be a focus in your downtown. Think of it as your living room. So what would you do to make downtown the community living room? And of course, it has to be a little different focus because we're outdoors and it's more of a public setting. But that's why I love these branding things where we worked in Old Strathcona in Edmonton, Alberta. You know, Life of the Edmonton Party. It's where people come to celebrate. This is what every downtown should be. So here's how you get this started. Ask your neighbors, ask your friends, ask any acquaintances that you know what kind of activities would get you to go downtown at least once a month. What would it have to be? And once a month would be 8% of the population downtown every month. You know, that means, can you get 1% downtown just 3 times per year? And if you can do that, you can win. And the best downtowns become that living room. I love places like the Front Porch Cafe. Yeah, they get it. You know, this is in downtown Portland, Oregon, the Bungalow Bar. It's where people come to hang out. And by the way, you could start with a pop-up park or a plaza. Here they used, in this picture, you can see they used a couple of parking spaces and a sidewalk, and they put some planters and benches around it. You can see the worker there setting up the chess set. But we're going to talk about something a little more permanent today, and that's a real plaza. But to get this, there is the handout that is available for you that talks about a temporary urban pop-up park, which should be in the heart of your spending district. And this is using the example of Los Altos, California. So to build your community living room, here are the ingredients. First of all, location that best be monetized, a people-friendly surface, insurance, power and water for various activities, trash receptacles, safety barriers, which are usually like planters like you just saw in that previous photo, access to public restrooms or washrooms, a stage or performance platform, just something that gets them just up a couple of feet, and then lighting, because the primary hours of a plaza are after work and on weekends. Storage space, you need stuff to do, that's the most important one, and then you got to change it up every couple of weeks so it's not static, and then volunteers. And we're going to go through each one of these. So here we go. Let's design and build a plaza on the cheap. Number 1, location, location, location. Where plaza should be within 100 feet. I'm going to get really specific in this one. 100 feet or 30 meters in front of retail and or dining. So a lot of times I see people putting plazas behind your retail. How is that working for you? And when you put it, it needs to be right there where the spending is. When you move it to one end of downtown or on a back street or back a block, you're pulling people out of downtown, and plazas are meant to pull people into downtown. So that's a good guideline to go for, 100 feet away from the front doors to retail and dining. And I'm going to show you, this is the town of Wisconsin Dells. Population is about 2,500, 5,000 in the 2 towns. Yes, it's the water park capital of the world. This is Broadway, the main drag through their downtown. And as you can see, they've got lots of cross traffic. Of course, there's traffic on Broadway, and they've got all these side streets and traffic going pretty much every direction. And what they did was something pretty cool, is they took one little, it's not even a block, it's just like half a block long, and they said, let's turn this little side street into a little gathering place. Okay, so they had the right idea. And by the way, people could always get around. There's little motels back there behind. It's really easy access to get around and into other parking lots. So they didn't lose that much. So you can see in these pictures, there's the before and there is the after. So what they did is they did this, and one of the mistakes they made, I think they made, was they used a boat for a stage. First of all, a boat took up way too much room, and then when you put musicians and people up there, you're kind of out of touch with the audience because you're in a boat. But, you know, at least they had the idea. But this is the site, so they put that boat there. That's going to be their stage. And then they had a gal who's really talented at painting the asphalt. They didn't put any pavers down. They just painted the asphalt, kind of a 3D image. You're going to see that in a minute. And then she went and painted that boat so it looked kind of rustic. And so they did this the whole thing took like 2 months to do. But one thing I want to show you is right here is a cheesecake house. It's a deli, a cafe, perfect. It's 100 feet away. Over on the other side, there's little restaurants, cafes, and stuff back in that. It's almost like a little mini mall back in there. So the location couldn't have been more perfect. Then they put this little concrete buffer there to keep vehicles out, and then they backed that up with screening with some bigger planters and everything just to create an intimate space. And at the end of the day, one thing that would have been nice, they put it up as temporary, and it ended up being temporary, but if it would have been more permanent, I would have encouraged the bakery to have outdoor cafe dining there. I would have had more tables and chairs there to really integrate these businesses into the plaza. But at the end of the day, there's what it looked like. Now, it looks like there's a creek running through there. I love these 3D murals like that and how people have really fun with it. And this is right after when they were painting it. And so the space doesn't have to be big. I mean, that is just like half a block long, but almost any space will work. Programming is the key. It's activating the space. This is in Shipshewana, Indiana. They just took this little alleyway, and how cool is that? It needs programming. So the idea is to get a site and lease it or rent it for $1 a month. If the city owns it, great. Let's say it's a private property owns it, a private developer or private individual owns it. Say, look, there's nothing on it. It's an empty space. It's right in the middle of our downtown. Can we rent or lease it from you for $1 a month? And it might be, there you go, and it could be a side street. And just tell them, by the way, if you're going to build something on your site, you could cancel our lease with a 90-day notice. So we're just going to use it temporarily. And I'm going to talk about the insurance yet. You know, and so if it's city-owned, you start, let's temporarily try it. In New York City, they closed down 60 miles of lanes of traffic and created 60 neighborhood plazas, all temporary, and none of them reopened. So just get a space you can rent and just let them know it's temporary. You're not trying to take it over. You're not going to put anything permanent on it, so it could always be reused, and anything you put on it, you could move to another site. Okay? The second part of this is keep it as flat as possible. You know, if we're playing games like Jenga, we need a pretty flat surface. And if you don't have a flat surface, you may need to terrace it. And when you terrace it, the steps, as you can see here, all become seating spaces. And that's the power of having steps. This is Winston Churchill Plaza in downtown Edmonton. I've been there many times, and every time I'm going there, I always see half a dozen to dozens of people just sitting on the steps. So if it's not level, you'll need to terrace it so you have multiple flat surfaces. Get it? So we just don't have a sloped plaza. And the next thing you can do, and I put this as an option, because if you want to start with this temporary plaza that we're going to develop, I shouldn't say temporary, but a plaza on the cheap, and you want it to grow over time, then the next thing to do is create a rendering. Just a loose rendering like you saw this on the opening slide. This was our initial design for Caldwell, Idaho. One thing we did is we made sure it's watercolor. We didn't want it to be computer generated. We wanted to sell a feeling. We didn't want it to be too defined, because at the end of the day, this is what they actually built. And it's amazing. So we designed one, they built this, and when we designed, people said, oh, we want to have that in our neighborhood. And then when it became reality, it turned into a little different kind of a plaza, but it is still amazing. So these are more detailed renderings. It's now built, open, and operating. But these are more detailed because now this is the actual design. And by the way, I was there this winter. It has an ice ribbon. I mean, it was just fantastic. This is Topeka, Kansas. We did an initial design that just said, here's where it could go. Here's what it might look like. We even did a rendering like this. But guess what? It's under construction, and it actually looks totally different. It's very similar in some ways, but here it is. This is going to be open pretty soon now. It's amazing. But these, once you do have a final design, you can do more detailed computerized renderings like this. But when it's just an idea, do something soft and warm so it's not so defined that you're stuck in a box. I'll give you a good example. We're working in Michigan City, Indiana. That yellow line you see there is where the plaza is. You can also see that there's 3 buildings there. Those are now gone. The city bought those so they have a nice big plaza area. Over there, the building right behind that, right above that number 3, is now going to be a restaurant with outdoor cafe dining. And in this case, they're even closing off the street. You know, and by the way, this whole thing's going to be level. So that's really important to this. And then at the end of the day, we said, okay, here's the site. Here's what it could look like. Now, we did these renderings, so you can see there's vendor booths down there. You can see there's a big splash pad that could be turned into an ice rink. You can see where the stage is. You can see all of those things. And then we even did this rendering, looking, if you're standing down the street at that level, you'd be seeing this. And so even though we designed this, at the end of the day, we said start with this, just pavers. So what this is, it's all just pavers, that little number 1. Then number 2, we said, okay, let's put a permanent stage there. Notice it's totally different than the way we started. And then there's a fence, that little black line that you see, those are all fencing so that people have access to buildings, like a wrought iron fence. And then we thought all those little black round circles you see by number 4, those are all going to be planters with like trees in them. And number 5, the little yellow dots, those are all going to be light standards. So I just said, why don't we just start with this? And then down the road, that circle where number 6 is, could be a splash pad. But you know what? To start, all we need is a surface. And so that's what this is about. At the end of the day, the last thing you need is architects and landscape architects at this point. When it becomes a built one and you have public restrooms on and you have other things that actually need to be built, a permanent stage with a green room, you name it, then we bring in those. At this point, you need programming and people. So all you need is that space. So urban planning, this is about people. But now, so once they have that space, just pavers, and they can put stuff on it on the cheap. But down the road, they could say, well, see that figure 8 there? That could be like a ribbon ice rink. It would have little walls on both sides. In the summer, you could do roller skating in it. Number 1, they may say the first thing we're going to add down the road is a splash pad. And you can always lift up the pavers, move them out of the way. Now we've raised money, and now we're going to put the splash pad there. So at least you're working towards something. So you can see it would have LED lighting below grade, variable jets, all of that kind of stuff. And then that number 2 there, kind of that shade structure, then we said, oh, down the road, we're going to have a glass structure over it or a tent over it so that no matter what the weather is, we still have a great place for people to come and hang out. And then maybe number 3, there's the ribbon there that could be roller skating or ice skating in the winter. And then, you know, number 4 over there, some buildings we could build that would have public restrooms in them, washrooms. And so this is just showing how it could be developed from that plain one. And then we even did some, and this is pretty simple stuff. Here's what it looked like if you had bocce ball courts. And you could even see climbing walls, vendor booths. You can see these things all on this plaza. How cool is that? Giant chess sets and all those yellow circles you see are Catalina umbrellas. Underneath those umbrellas is a table and 4 chairs. So what we're doing is showing the vision of how this could morph from a simple space into an activity space. In this case, what if all those colored things you see, number 2 in there, could be art installations, because number 1 might be roller skating in the summer. The splash pad would just be something you can look at. And you might even have like the Zorbs, the bottom right. I still want to do one of these. The Zorb where you can go in and they might run around that figure 8 circle. Or you have roller skates sometimes. Here's a configuration shown with a dance floor in front of the stage. And you can see vendor booths under that shaded area. And so you just show different ways of that, what it could morph into. Here you're showing all kinds of yoga mats. You could do yoga. In this case, you're showing all kinds of tables and chairs. And number one there could be a bridal fair or a garden show or a farmer's market, most of it under the cover there. And the splash pad is operating. There's tables and chairs wrapped around that. You could show configurations for concerts. Just on and on and on. In the winter, this whole thing underneath that where it's number one could be an ice rink. And if the weather's good, you can run it around the ice ribbon. And you notice in the center area where the splash pad is now a major Christmas tree. And so you could do all kinds of things. But what you're doing is showing something for the future. But here's how it all starts. You start with a rendering. You sell a feeling. What you want is somebody to look at this and say, oh my gosh, there's where all the little vendor booths are for this. And then, look down here. You can see all the tables and chairs. Here's another arrow over to the right. You can see people on the stage. So there's entertainment there. You can see people out there watching the entertainers. Then there's over to the right, you can see now there's a restaurant there. It looks like it has an upper story balcony overlooking the plaza, and there's tables and chairs in front of that. What you want people to do is start looking at these, and they're literally walking right. You can see the gateway over to the right, bottom right corner where you enter the plaza. And when people start imagining, they start walking through your site, you are going to close the sale. This last little arrow that showed up there is where they do the production for the sound and lights for the stage, for the band there. And so this is not a final design. You can see even there's the light standards, and they've got pole banners on them. And so the whole idea, and then you've got street trees everywhere gathered around. You got little shops here and there. It's just a cool place to hang out. And so the purpose of doing your rendering is say, this is what our simple, plain, cheap plaza could look like over time. And that is really important. Now, to do this, and this is just an option, would be probably $2,500. Remember, you're starting with something really simple. You could even have a university architecture class or landscape architect or urban planning students or faculty help you design what it could look like. You could have a local artist do it, but I want you to do watercolor style renderings because it's a little bit looser and it sells a feeling more than hard assets. And so that's something you could do. And I would always recommend that because it gives you something to build for. But number one was getting a site. Number two is the surface. I'm a big, and by the way, no grass. Grass is not people friendly. And by the way, I'm not against lawn. I love lawns, except for here in Arizona. But, lawn is not people friendly. You have to mow it. You have to take care of it. If it gets wet, it gets mushy. It's hard. It's just difficult. And that's why the best plazas anywhere use a paver surface. So we're not talking asphalt. We're not talking concrete. We're talking pavers that can be multicolored. They could be almost anything. And one thing about this is it's $15 a square foot installed. So wherever your site is, if you want to take it down to bare dirt, this is included, bare dirt. You smooth it all out with a backhoe or grader, whatever it is, and then you put down sand and rock and everything, which is all compacted, and then you put pavers on it. The nice thing about pavers is you can pick them up and move them. But another nice thing about pavers is you can actually raise money with them. So these are 4-inch by 8-inch pavers here. They have 3 lines of text on them. Here are some pavers, but then there's 8 by 8-inch pavers, all with text on them. And what's really cool is that you can go and help raise money to put this surface down. Here's some examples. This is polar engraving. To have a brick engraved is $17.50, 8 by 8 is $25. And we gave you a few options here. And by the way, in the handout gives you all this details because I'm not going to go line by line. But there are many companies that include engraving services, and you're seeing the costs here. And so all of this will be in your handout so we don't go into details. But I love this chart. And I thought, okay, let's just do a 3,000 square foot plaza, just a little 3,000 square foot place to hang out. So I thought, okay, if we could sell 100 pavers at $100 each, you'd make $82.50. So it tells you what the cost is per brick, including shipping, and there's the cost. You'd make that. So if we could sell 100 pavers, and then if we sold 100 pavers for $250, we'd raise that much. And then if we only sold 50 pavers that are 12 by 12, yeah, they're $500, but for banks and businesses and locals and philanthropy-minded people, you know what? All of those, if we just sold, this is 250 bricks sold. That's all, 250 bricks sold, and it raises $53,000. Now, if we were building a 3,000 square foot plaza to start, and by the way, they could go all the way up, that one in Michigan City is like 60,000 feet. But they may even say, well, we're only going to pave a quarter of it for right now, and eventually we'll add more and more and more. But so to do this for all the bricks would be $45,000. You know, that's 13,500 bricks, you know, at 2.5 inches thick. By the way, make sure they're nice, thick bricks. Don't use the thin ones. They break and they need replacement too often. And if you sold 500 bricks, you could raise $41,000, and that's just the 4x8 ones for $100, you know, and so you could raise that, and that's the net price. And in this case, I didn't even do the example I showed you before. We just sold 4x8 inch bricks. We didn't do 8x8s and 12x12s. But then you might say, so now if you just sold 500 bricks at $100 a piece, there's your net, $41,000. You'd only need $4,000 more, and you'd have the whole plaza ready to go. That's pretty cool. And so, you know, things to consider. If you don't have that time and you want to get started, asphalt or concrete will work just fine. You saw Wisconsin Dells, there was cracks in the asphalt. They just painted over it, and in the end, it worked fine. But just paint it, decorate it. And by the way, activities are more important than the surface. So there you go about pavers. But the other option is if you have multi-level, you can still do it with pavers, creating paver steps and stuff, but it creates more, you have to do some retaining walls. It requires more grading and stuff. The other option is to do decking. Now decking, it's hard. You can see there's engraving on the edge there. So you can still have things engraved, but it's a little more cumbersome, a little more difficult to do. But if we took our same 3,000 square feet, and decking's a little more expensive, about $20 a square foot, and you could use, and by the way, that's for Trex, or that's one brand of composite decking. There's no slivers, there's no maintenance costs, and it's made from recyclable plastic, but it looks and feels like wood, but without the nightmare of taking care of an actual wood deck. And that $20 square foot includes the substructure, railings around it. If it's, you know, if it's more than a step up like this picture, it includes all of that. So the total cost of doing it that way would be about $60,000. So it's a little more expensive, but it gives you a really nice home style type of surface you can work with. Getting sponsors on that is a little more difficult, but it can be engraved once again. But it's just hard to engrave a board versus a brick is a little more difficult to do. But I wanted to give you that option. And this works really well for non-level sites that need to be terraced, you know, 2 or 3 levels. And then, by the way, remember the steps are seating spaces. But I wanted to give you one example. This is Park de Plaza in Long Beach, California. It's in a little neighborhood, and it is just 2,250 square feet. That's it. It's within that little yellow square that I put there. And they did this in 2014. There it is, 30 by 75 is the size of it. And they did this thing for $6,000. So what they did is it took 30 gallons of paint. They put up these umbrellas, and this was just a temporary thing. So they put up the umbrellas. They got in a couple dozen of these Adirondack-style chairs, and for a while there, they had tetherball there. It's not right there, but they would do movies on there. They would have speakers on there. You know, it's just a cool little neighborhood thing. So $6,000 and 30 gallons of yellow paint, 24 Adirondack chairs. They'd put 5 10-foot umbrellas there, and then they would just invite food trucks, tetherball, games, speakers, you name it, it works. So I love the paver idea. It's a great way to help pay for itself, and it gives you a great service. Water can go right through pavers. It can go right through decking, so you don't have drainage problems. We've even seen people actually put wires underneath so they're heated in the winter for people that deal with ice and snow. So that's number 2, your surface. Number 3 is insurance. Yes, every plaza needs to have insurance, and typically it would fall under city's umbrella policy. But the city might say, okay, it's gonna fall under the umbrella policy, so it doesn't cost the city anything more, but then we're gonna lease it to you, whether it's a chamber of commerce, whether it's a downtown association, whether it's a tourism or a destination marketing organization, we're gonna lease it to you for $1 a year. So we're gonna insure the liability of the site and those things, and then you might have a cost of about $850 a year for liability, general liability insurance. You know, there might be an additional cost if you want to have beer gardens. We know plazas where they'll put out a few beer gardens with car shows and everything. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on that. But check with your city or downtown regarding their umbrella insurance endorsements. I think that's really important. And then if you ever bring people on site, every vendor should also provide a proof of insurance certificate. It's easy for them to get. All they have to do is call their insurance company and say, hey, I need a certificate of insurance for the plaza or for the city. Okay? So there's that on insurance, but it's still a really key thing to keep in mind. Number 4, make sure you have power and water to the site. I always say that you should have 150 to 300 amps and 3-phase power, and I'm not even getting into all the details because you'll have all of this, but it's equivalent to like 15, 20 amp outdoor outlets. Most outlets in the US and Canada, when they're outside, they're 20 amps, and this is like having 7 to 15 of those. And this allows for most bands, for lighting, for if you're going to bring in a portable ice rink and they need some place to plug some of the chillers things into. This allows for all of that. You can see in the background there's a power utility box that was painted really nice. So the cost of this is about $5,000 to do. Now, this is always done by your local power company. They usually charge by the amp. So for instance, we did one example of Seattle City Light, and they charge to bring the service to the site ranges from $6 to $12 per amp. So if we're doing, 300 amps, you can add it up. It adds up to about $5,000. However, we have seen power companies actually donate this. And then they sponsor the power supplied to the plaza is sponsored by Seattle City Light or whatever your power company is. So we've actually seen that happen. And remember, there is a power bill. So even if they give it to you for free, they're not giving you the power for free. So there is the monthly power bills that you're going to get. But we have seen many plazas where the city says, look, we're just going to add it to our power bill. You program it, but we'll pay for the electricity. And remember, so far we're not using a whole lot here. Then number 5 is you need trash receptacles and you need a trash pickup agreement. One of the mistakes I've seen people create these little plaza parks and things like that, and they end up spending a lot of time picking up trash. These are fairly expensive. These are commercial grade. They're steel. They're painted. Here's one for $362. I happen to like these. There's a couple of places where you can go. There's a gazillion kinds of trash cans out there. And no matter what you get to have grade school kids paint them. Make it fun. Make it part of the community. Remember, this is about people. You don't want to make it look too institutional. I'm not a big fan of aggregate trash cans, big concrete things. You want things to be fun and organic. But, for trash cans, let's say you spend $400 a piece and you get 6 of them. So we're in it for $2,000. And then sometimes parks departments or public works will actually have some stored in a facility somewhere. Or perhaps because they buy them for parks departments, they can get a discounted price for you, even cheaper than what I listed. And you could even trash can sponsor where you say, hey, this trash receptacle is sponsored by such and such bank or by the city or whatever. And that's when you paint them, you can paint whatever you want them. You might even borrow them from other sites. Maybe parks aren't used during the winter, so you bring them into the plaza during the winter. And you could even look for used ones and have volunteers paint them and fix them up. Okay, so we got trash cans. The next thing we need are safety barriers, but I would call these planters. You know, these planters here, I love these planters. By the way, you notice they can fit a forklift under them. These are not on casters. It's too easy for people to move them around if they're on casters. But you might be able to borrow a forklift and move them around as you change your plaza. But here it's a little dining area, and you can see they gather them around. You can see even in some locations, they put a little chain there so you don't walk through that area. And I love planters because they serve dual purpose. They make it feel welcoming. They make it feel alive. It's beautiful. And even these are tree planters, and these could be moved around. They were stacked right here, but with the forklift, they can move these around, and they have real trees in them. So remember what I said is until this becomes a permanent plaza, everything you have here is movable, but it still adds beautification. You know, you can buy these. These are in front of a retail store, but you can buy sets of these. I would paint them so they're not so gray and drab, but it's just another way to add a barrier so vehicles can't get in your space. And you always want to make sure you leave enough room for strollers and wheelchairs to get through. These ones that you see here on the left are actually made in Switzerland, and they're about $1,100 each. And they have little feet underneath, so you can still get a forklift under them if you want to move them around. The one down below is little. It's 30 inches long. It's 28 inches high. I actually like the ones that are about 24 inches high to 22 inches high. The reason is that's the height of a chair, and sometimes people like sitting on the edges of these. So the approximate cost, if you did 10 of these at $400 a piece, you'd be in it for $4,000. But now we need to add trees, shrubs. We added another $4,000. They could even be locally made. I'm sure you got craftspeople there. They can be made out of wood. They can be made out of just about anything. And make sure they are raised so you can be moved, raised underneath a couple inches, and then make sure you can run water to them, whether it's an irrigation system or, you know, even if you're manually doing soaker hoses, you name it. You name it. And then always leave space for wheelchairs and strollers between them, but where cars can't get through. And that's the whole idea, is to make people on your plaza feel safe. Okay? And you could even work with a local garden club to help maintain them. Kiwanis, Rotary. These are other organizations. We always look to cities, but don't forget these people. And then they can also be sponsored. You put little plaques on them for like $15 to $20. You put little plaques, say, this planter sponsored by a local resident. And they might pay for the planter and maybe even the landscaping. And number 7, make sure there's access to public restrooms. The one mistake they made when I was speaking to the people in Wisconsin Dells is they had that cool little plaza, but there was no restrooms. And so visitors loved it, except for people would say, well, we don't have public restrooms, you know, which was really sad. But, you know, this is a pretty big expense, but I love these portable restroom trailers. Remember, right now you might just be leasing the site. So do you really want to, you know, put in something permanent? You can buy these, you can rent them, you can even get pre-owned ones. And I'm going to give you an example. Here you go. See the one in the top left? It's got 3 restrooms. The one on the right is ADA, so a wheelchair can get in there. It's ADA accessible. You can see the other photos. These are actually quite nice. You know, you can see they even have little silk plants in them. You can see the top middle one. They got plenty of toilet tissue. You never want to run out of that. And you can see they've got nice sinks and everything. These are really cool. So now, to buy one of these, just like what you're seeing, is about $65,000. But you know what? You can also get them used for less than half the price. And you always want to make sure you have one for Americans with Disability Act, for anybody that's handicapped, that they still have access, and then 2 standard restrooms. And they do need to have access to the power. We already talked about that, so we need to run a cable there, so we do have lights in there and some power needs. Some of them even have heat. Generally, I don't see them with air conditioning. And they should be cleaned twice a day and monitored. And so that's really important. And I'm not going to get too much into detail, but that's probably the most expensive thing we're going to talk about. And then, you know what? If you need more information, this is in the resource center, and this video gives you tons more information about public restrooms or washrooms. Number 8, a stage or performance platform. You know, this is in Ashland, Oregon. It's the Green Show stage. Now you notice it's got a covering on it. It's got sides on it. You can see up under the covering, there's all kinds of lights, there's speakers and everything. But when they started this, it was just that. It's just a platform. So over time, you can raise money and then add the rest to it. And so or you can even put a tent over it and have it temporary, or you can do, see what I mean? But all you need to start is just a platform that's up a foot or two above the audience, so it's easy for them to see the performers. It's that simple. I mean, here's another view of it. So something simple like that would be perfect. You know, if you wanted to build something, a permanently built raised deck using Trex, that's that composite decking, maybe 12 grand. And I would have it 20 feet deep and 30 feet wide. So you can put you can put an inflatable screen on it and show movies on your square. I'd have it probably 2 to 3 feet above the ground at $20 a square foot is what we did. You do need to run power to the stage. I would, wherever you put your power on your plaza, it should be pretty close to the stage, because this is where most of your power will be used up. And you might even have railings on sides, and that's priced. $12,000 includes that. And then you could always get tenting with sides in the back, could be rented if you have inclement weather or windy, or you want to have it more enclosed. And then you can always rent trusses for lights, for sound, depending on what you're having. A real stage can cost about $60,000 or more. But this, for a fraction of the price, you're started. Look what somebody did just to host like a wedding or something in their backyard. Something like that would be fantastic. Or even just a simple deck like this. You can even go buy this one right here that you're seeing on the right is 8 feet deep and 12 feet wide. It's a little bit small, but if you have a small plaza, it's fine, and it's $1,500. Let me go back to that, because I went through it really quick. That's $1,500. And even if you add rails around the back and both sides, and add a skirt around it, we call it a skirt so you can't see underneath it, might be full of cords and wire stuff, you still be at $2,000. But we budgeted in this case $12,000, okay? So that gives you a good idea of what we're doing. And number 9 is lighting. And I know I'm going through this pretty fast, but remember, you're going to get a handout that's got every single slide is a full page, so you can see the photos and all the details. Now, the lighting here is really important. Let's say that you had a 3,000 square foot plaza. I'm using that as our example. And let's say it's 50 feet by 60 feet. So 60 feet deep, 50 feet wide. Sorry for you in Canada speaking meters. But you'd have one row of these lights every 6 feet and about 50 feet across. There's a little asterisk. I'm going to get to that. And then you might have a total of 10 rows. You have 60 feet every 10 feet. It's $56 for these lights, and they're made for outdoor. Plus you have mounting hardware, you know, because you might have your plaza between 2 buildings. So the total cost of lighting is like $800, including the hardware. And so these are Honeywell that you see in the picture, 24 foot long. So you'd have 2 strings tied together. They're commercial grade. Those are LED bulbs, by the way. So they'll last like 30,000 hours. It's really cool. And there you go. If mounted between 2 buildings, you may need to get some, if you don't have 2 buildings, you might need to get some corner posts. And yes, that's an added expense. But remember, we could save a lot of money on some other areas. And so you may need some corner posts to support them. And so at the end of the day, you want warm light. You always, if you go see lights in a store, you see 2400K, that's warm light, kind of a yellowish color. You don't want 5000K. That's what you see inside of a grocery store or Walmart or Canadian Tire. You don't want that. You want this to be warm and fuzzy. And so this is what it can do. So this is lighting. And remember, your peak hours for a plaza are after work and on weekends. And these lights here, I think, are a little bit bright. And then number 10, we're getting there, a storage place. We're going to be putting lots of stuff on your plaza. We need a place to store it because we want things to change. So if you've got an empty building somewhere, you can lease for $1 a month, fall under your insurance. It doesn't have to be fancy. It does need to be secure, and it does need to have power. So if you need to get some out of storage in the evening hours or during the winter months, you still have power there. It doesn't have to be heated necessarily, but you need a storage place. Hopefully you won't have to pay anything for storage, because a lot of time public works or parks departments will have buildings with some space, and you're going to see why we need the storage in a minute. Or maybe you work with a local college or school. They say, well, yeah, we've got a garage barn or something, we'll just loan it to you. And so what we're trying to do is just get someplace. I don't think you need to go rent a bunch of storage units for the things that we're going to be moving on and off the plaza. And by the way, if you have a 3,000 square foot plaza, you probably need about 3,000 square feet of storage. If you have a 10,000 square foot plaza, you need about 5,000 square feet of storage. So usually about half, but you start with 3,000. And high ceilings would be great. That way you can stack things, and it should have easy for truck loading, pickup truck or whatever, a flatbed truck getting to it. Okay? Now what you have is a plaza. You've got a surface, you've got barriers, you've got beautification, you've got water, and I'll give you the price for water in a minute. You've got power, you've got a stage platform. You're all set. Now we're ready to get stuff to do. And I would always suggest every plaza have a sign about that side. It's out in Greenville, South Carolina, coming soon, the Riverwalk. But I'd love to see a sign that size that you could change. That you say next week showcase, and you say next week we're having table games. Next week we're doing fitness things on the plaza. Next week, next couple of weeks. And you always want to change. Okay? So that's a sign you have. But you could put together a sponsor menu of things that people can buy or sponsor. So for instance, in this case, we're saying, look, we want to get 6 of these 4 to score giant games. That's one on the left where it's like tic-tac-toe, but 4 in a row. They're $200 a piece. And we want to get 6 Jenga sets at $70 each. If you would sponsor it, your investment would be $1,250. We just did 12 different activities, 6 Jenga sets and 6 4 to score game sets for $1,250. And then what you do is you have a little sandwich board that says the Jenga sets and the 4 to score games are sponsored by so-and-so bank, or sponsored by the city, or sponsored by a school, or sponsored by a local residence. So what they're doing is they're giving you $1,250 to buy those 12 games. How cool is that? And then on the menu say, but by the way, we would also like to get 4 mega chess sets with 25-inch tall. If we could get 4 of those, your investment, they're $750 a piece, your investment would be $1,800. However, we love those ones more on the right picture there. They're way even taller. They're really cool. If you don't mind spending up to $3,500, you could sponsor these. And you're going to have these. These will be sponsored for years. You don't ever take away their sponsorship. You could even have their name actually printed right on the chest. Notice those mats. You could actually have their name sponsored right on here. This chess game sponsored by so-and-so. So they're getting some benefit out of this. But people could pick their level of sponsorship. We would like to get 4 Playcraft exterior outdoor foosball tables, or $1,200 a piece. We'd like to get 4 Julanova outdoor tennis tables and paddles. So your investment would be $7,600. So you could go to organizations and say, well, I only have $1,000 to sponsor, so I'm going to pick this one. But they say, well, you know what? We could sponsor $7,500, so we're going to take on the foosball tables and the ping pong tables. See, so what you're doing is creating a menu for people. I mean, look at this one. Here you go. For less than $1,000, you could get 48 hula hoops, 36 inches, which is the adult side, and 48 a bundle pack of 32-inch side for kids. And you could get 3 racks to put them on. Your total investment would be $950. And you've got 96 hula hoops to work with. How cool is that for less than $1,000? Somebody else might say, well, we want to sponsor 6 of these Maga spun armchairs, which came from one of our members. I hadn't even heard of these. I think they're the coolest things ever. And so you could get 6 of these and your sponsorship would be $2,400. Or you could do this. There's a harp on the left. You could do this pagoda bells. That's the one in the middle, or one melody. This is Free Notes Harmony Park. Or you can do a whole ensemble collection, which ranges from $7,000 to $20,000, and you pick the 5 instruments you want. And so somebody say, well, we're willing to sponsor $10,000 and we're going to pick the 5 instruments for you. You know, I mean, it's pretty cool what they have, all of these. They've got these are the new mallets that they use, but you can see some of the instruments there on the left side of that. You could even have a sponsor get you 8 10x10 easy pop-up canopy tents. This would be for local vendors to use or local farms. Maybe there's local people making banana bread or they make jewelry and they don't have money to go out and do this. You're creating, your plaza is turning into an incubator. So a sponsor could come in and do, you know, 8 of these for $2,500. You know, here's a park in a cart portable skate park. I think you should have 2 of them. You know, $9,000 for 2 of them. Somebody could sponsor that. Or how about cornhole tosses? You know, they call these driveway games. You know, they're $120 for $500. You could buy and sponsor 4 of these. In the winter, you know, I'm going through a lot here, but in the winter, here we go. You know, you could sponsor 8 fire tables, or fire pits, you know, and a propane tank is like $30, and then you get one fill. Fill's usually like $10. And so they say, if you want to, if you could, so can you imagine the sponsors that could come into this? And some of them might take multiples. Look at this. Here's one for $150. You can sponsor 3 quantity mobile badminton sets. And Natalie in our office found this, and I think this is the coolest thing ever. I want to get one of these for our yard. It's freestanding. It's a weighted base right there. And so these investments or these sponsorships don't have to be expensive. Almost anybody, I mean, even kids in school could raise money and sponsor the badminton sets. You know, I love fitness out there, you know, so there's one there. And then here's a little bigger one. Not all these have to be sponsored, but if you got 200 out stack chairs, you want chairs that can stack in case you need to store them temporarily for other events like the skate park on your plaza, 50 tables and 50 umbrellas for $11,000. There you go. And then now here's mega chess checkers. You can buy just the checkers and use the same chess sets. Or if you want to buy separate mats, they're about $65 each. There you go. So this is about just all the different things that people could sponsor. Maybe you'll fundraise and just buy all the stuff yourself. But there's 4 sets of Imagination Playground. They're 105-piece sets. So you'd have 420 pieces in this scenario. And that's a little more expensive. It's $25,000, a little less than that. And then what's really important with all these, and these are just some of the ideas, then always promote your sponsors with plaques, or you could do a sign like this. Look, notice this was also in Greenville. They said you can park free at nights and weekends, courtesy Independence National Bank. But wouldn't it be cool if you did this? You say, you know, we're going to have all the games and things are sponsored by these sponsors, and you list 3 or 4 or 5 sponsors. And you give them credit. They're part of building your community. Farmers Insurance. I mean, it doesn't matter. There's just a number of people that would love to help sponsor this. So, you know, when you look at this, look, 6, 4 to score, 6 giant chess sets, 4 mega chess sets, 4 mega checkers, 4 foosball tables, ping pong tables, 96 hula hoops. Look at this list. This is an amazing list of stuff you can put on your plaza, and you don't put it all out there at once. This is where you need the storage. You move things in and out. And that's what's really fun. And by the way, if you were to buy everything shown there, it adds up to $76,000. So if you got 0 sponsorships, that's what you'd be in. And then you might add, you know, $2,000 for sponsors. So any sponsor reduces that $76,000. So let's add all this up. First of all, we got to clean up the location, the plaza. Cleaning up the location, I didn't even put in there. We know it has to be done. Let's give ourselves $3,000. You can get somebody with a backhoe or with a what we call a skid steer loader, like a Bobcat, you know. And then the plaza surface, this is largely self-funded if you did bricks. So I didn't put the whole, you know, $40,000 or $60,000 there. And we put the balance. If you didn't sell that many bricks or anything, you might be in it for 10 grand instead of 4 grand like I showed you. Power and water. I added $2,000 to get water in a couple different sites there. Remember, this is in the heart of your downtown, so utilities are probably not going to have to be run more than 100 feet. Trash receptacles, we put that in there. Your barrier planters, including the planning. Your public restrooms, I put in the full price to buy one brand new. You know, I put in $12,000 for your stage, lighting, I put $800. Your security, I didn't even tell you about security cameras, but you might have security cameras there. And it's not to make it look like Gestapo, but it's to ward off anybody happening in the middle of the night out there. Because we don't pack up all the stuff every night. And then for your activities, you just built yourself an amazing plaza for a total of less than $200,000. And that's if you got no sponsors. You had to buy all that stuff. And so, you know, I just want to give you a comparison because this is where communities, I just don't get. And by the way, you could probably get public restrooms if you bought a used one for $30,000. So if you got sponsors for half of the stuff down below and you got a used one of those for $30,000 less, that's you'd be in a plaza for $100,000. But look at this. This is, somebody might be saying, we're going to build a varsity softball field. There's the mobilization management, the layout. Look at the water, subgrade, final grade turf. This is what it costs to build one varsity softball field. But you know what? Let's forget the bleachers even. Let's forget the press box. Let's forget the storage building batting cages. Let's just build a field. That's it, just a field. And you're still in it for $400,000. And it doesn't include all the stuff you see showing up on the right side of your screen. I mean, you know what? And this creates a return on investment. I mean, because it increases the value of the retail buildings within 3 blocks of your plaza. I just don't see where people will say, well, let's build a field. Well, let's go build a baseball field over. And by the way, I love baseball fields, but would you do that over doing something in your downtown that creates a return on investment and creates a community living room that can have people gather on 365 days a year? Yeah. And then bring in vendors, school events and productions, portable ice rink, portable zip lines, climbing walls. These are all vendor things. They charge a couple bucks for people to use it, but it adds life. Then you bring in your farmers markets, art shows. You invite car clubs and other hobby organizations, vendors. I mean, we have videos on this. How to bring your downtown to life. It's back to this one. How to get people downtown 250 days a year. We just did this video about moving from events to activities and even marketing on a minuscule budget. All of these will show you how to attract outsiders to put their programming for the public on their plaza. And then if you bring in vendors, get a percentage of their sales, like 10%. We've seen many plazas that were built for $5 to $8 million that are generating $500,000 to $700,000 a year in revenues from beer gardens, from 10% of gross sales, or from renting a space for vendors. And so there's no reason why revenues generated from vendor activities can't bring in a couple $100,000 a year. This would give you the funding to even staff it. And so if we talk about ongoing expenses, here you go. We're adding them up right now. And restrooms, maintenance. This is maintenance 2 times per day, $50 of cleaning. I mean, all of this adds up to about $100,000 a year. And remember what I said, you could easily generate a couple $100,000 a year just from event sponsors, from booth rentals, from all of those things, a percentage of sales. Number 12, change the activities every couple of weeks. So what I would do is have 26 changes, that'd be every 2 weeks, but you might do 13. For instance, you see the cute little girl here, that's Imagination Playground. You might say, well, we only need 13 changes because we're going to bring out Imagination Playground once during the summer and once during spring break. So you could have 13 different changes. You may have some things that never change, like you might have a couple of chess sets and then sometimes we're going to bring out 2 more. But the thing is to always keep it changing. So if you had 13 different changes and you did those 13 twice each year, you always want it to change. You want people to say, I wonder what's going on downtown this week. And then the last one, volunteers. I mean, I cannot say enough about volunteers. You need to have 1 or 2 people on site from 11 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. And have them create an army of volunteers who give a 2-hour shift twice a month. That would take 5 volunteers a day, unless you have a staff. Then, and I believe that a plaza can generate revenues for staff. And then you might have a total of 75 volunteers plus 10 alternates. So if somebody's sick or something, you still have volunteers. And by the way, I've seen mayors do this. They'll go out there for the plaza. I mean, this is a public space. Mayors, city council people, city managers, economic development people, retailers. I've seen lots, even high school students. You know, I mean, these are all people that can go. They're just 2 hours a day, twice a month. That's it, 4 hours a month. And in exchange, you're going to provide them with logo t-shirts that can say event staff or the name of the plaza, polo shirts, baseball caps, you name that. You take them to dinner once or twice a year, and you award them if they donate 2 years of service. And we even have videos how to recruit and keep awesome volunteers. And then you want doers, not directors. This is for your organization. You might have a board that runs this, a group of volunteers that run this plaza. Approximate cost for all that would be about $2,500. That's for shirts and caps, for dinner once or twice a year, and a recognition award. And finally, keep it simple. Make it fun. It's your community living room. I urge you to do this. What comes first is in any city and downtown is creating a sense of community in the heart of your spending district.